Welcome back to Adventures with Dice. I'm Rob and I'm your host for these videos. And this is another video in my Adventures with Dice solo series of Dragonbane. And if you watched any of the first 3 episodes, I played through, I think, the first adventure in the Deepfall Breach solo book, or booklet, that came with the box set. And it was fun. I had a good time with it. But one of the problems I had with it, I made a wizard going into it, and that was alone, so that was probably not the smartest move I ever made. But a lot of people doing the solo videos on Dragonbane are doing Deepfall Breach, and a lot of it tends to be more of the same when you're watching it. So I decided when I came back to this that I wanted to do solo, but I wanted to do something different. And originally it was just for me. I wasn't intending to, film it and put it up. And then as I got back into making more videos, I was like, you know what? I could just do the recaps of the solo play and show how I did it, what perspective I went with this time. And so that's what I did. I've played through my first session with it, and I've got my notes to go over here, but I wanted to take a minute to explain what I did and how I'm doing it different than the Deepfall Breach adventure that comes in the box set. So, first of all, I wanted to run a game with, the idea was 2 or 3 characters, and not use the Army of One stuff from Deepfall Breach, just normal characters, and use the rules presented in the rule book to randomly generate a story and then play through that story. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. I am using the experience from Deepfall Breach as far as they get 5 experience at the end of every session to put wherever they want to. And then, of course, any dragons or demons I roll will get marked, and I'll roll to see if they go up at the end on their experience rolls. So, being as I was kind of going at this outside of the box, I had to look at what I was going to use. And I am using the core solo rules, which has the fortune chart, and I can use this fortune chart. I've used it in several videos and games so far. I used it for Old Swords Reign. I've used it for Dragonbane. I'm using it for Dragonbane again here. But on the fortune chart, it's a 1d6 fortune chart, and it answers yes/no questions, number, scale, power, quality, and reaction. So I have the fortune chart that I'm working with. I also have the inspiration table for actions, attributes, and things. And I'm also using exploration tables from the book to give me... I changed the random inhabitants roll because, quite frankly, I didn't want my game to end suddenly because I randomly rolled a demon or a dragon, and I wanted to go with stuff that I had readily available. So I changed this, and I'll show you how I changed it to fit what I have available to work with. But I'll be using the area table and the descriptor subtables for the areas for my oracle. Now, my oracle will come into play, as you'll see, several times during the game. But when it comes to solo role-playing, I think, and in my experience, you want to use the oracle system as little as possible. So only when it really makes sense, you really need to know the answer to a question that you don't know. Because if you're making the game, you're playing solo. You're playing solo to entertain you, not anybody else. Now, it's a little different when you're doing videos on it because you want it to be somewhat entertaining for everybody who watches it. But at the same time, I'm still playing the game for me. So one of the things I try to do is, if the situation arises or I get descriptive words that I have to put together, I don't just keep rolling on the Oracle table to figure everything out. I will go through the process of what seems the most logical, what seems cool, what would make for a good story in my mind, and that's what I add into it. But you'll see some of that as we go. So the first thing I needed characters. And I'm going to go through the characters here just briefly. This is Velaron Grimshaw. He is a human fighter. He has the weakness of boastful, always bragging. He has an ugly scar across his cheek and foul body odor. He specializes in using axes, hammers. He's okay with bows, and he's pretty good with swords. But he wears chainmail armor and carries a two-handed axe with him. He has a memento that is a ring with an inscription, and he is carrying torches, rations, a necklace, assorted maps, rope, 10 meters of rope, and a ring of keys. So that is our first one, and he's also the one I have not finished painting yet. I've only partly painted the figure, but this is the miniature I have on the table to represent Velaron. All right, and my next one, his buddy, is Trop Nightstabber. He is a dwarf thief. He is a pessimist. Things are always going to go bad. He's a dwarf who's balding, and he has a weathered face. Let's see, he is a thief, so he is really good with knives, acrobatics, sleight of hand, stealth, that kind of stuff. He carries a couple of daggers on him, no armor to speak of. He has rations, he has marbles, he has torch, he has rope, he has a healing potion, which I've already rolled, and it's one of the 3d6 healing potions, which I don't think come in the core box. I think that came from the additional treasures deck 1, and it has a healing potion in it, but when you get a healing potion, you roll randomly to see how potent it is. So the one he got is pretty potent. But that is my dwarf thief, and he is painted. I'm not sure how well that's going to pick up on the camera, but that's the miniature I'm using for him. And then the third character that I'm using, I actually created using the bestiary, because this is Lurig Shadowbolt, and he is a goblin hunter. His weaknesses, he's greedy, has red eyes and green skin. He wears leather armor, carries a dagger and a short bow, and he is proficient with both. He's proficient with knives, he's proficient with bows, and he's their tracker, explorer type character. And this is the miniature that I'm using for Lurig. Again, not exactly sure how well that's going to pick up, but it's a cool miniature. If it doesn't pick up real good, I'll try to put some, or maybe I'll just put some photos of them up on the page on the community tab so you can get a better look at them. So I created my 3 characters, and I then needed to come up with an adventure for them to play. And what I used is out of the main book. So if you have the Dragonbane book, this is not just in the hardback, it's in the regular book out of the box set as well. But if you have this book, these charts that it has in here for generating adventures are fantastic for doing what I'm doing, for doing solo role play, but they're also fantastic if you need to generate an adventure and you don't have a lot of prep time. You can simply take a set of dice, roll them, and boom, you have an adventure. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to skip to the back where it is. And there are, in the journeys section, there's, of course, mishaps for journeys and so on and so forth. But then you have the creating adventures. And creating adventures was really helpful for this. You have 3 sections, basically, to an adventure. You have the quest, you have the journey, and you have the adventure site. And then, of course, this goes into campaigns and the Castle of the Robber Knight. So how do you use this? So if you look at the chart here, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but you could pause and zoom in if you need to. But you have a chart that has a D4 list, a D6, a D8, a D10, a D12, and a D20. So what you would do is you take a D4, a D6, somewhere here there's a D8, D8, D10, D12, and D20, right? And then set this to the side. So if you have no idea what you want to do for the evening and you need to generate an adventure real quick, you can use this method, or you could use this for creating a story for solo play, which is what I did. So you could roll all these dice, and we get a 3 on the D4, we get a 6 on the D6, a 6 on the D8, a 10 on the D10, an 8 on the D12, and a 3 on the D20. So you come across the chart. Now this is the quest. What is the quest? So on D4, you're rolling for 1 day, and then you're rolling 1D4, something happens. So I rolled a 3, so we go 1 day around the warmth of the campfire. That's what number 3 is. And then we would go up to number 6. The characters come across, and I got a 6, an omen. So 1 day around the warmth of the campfire, the characters come across an omen. And this D8 is from, about, or with, and I also got a 6 on that. So 6 is Dragonbane, a secretive elven hunter. So 1 day around the warmth of a campfire, the characters come across an omen about Dragonbane, a secret elven hunter. Who wants to, this is the D10, and D10 is a find. So 1 day around the warmth of the campfire, the characters come across an omen about Dragonbane, a secretive elven hunter who wants to find, something. What is it? I look at my D12 for the next list, and that is an 8. He wants to find a case. All right, what is this case called? The D20 is the last one, and that is a 3. And it is called Syncrad's Treachery. So 1 day around the warmth of the campfire, the characters come across an omen about Dragonbane, a secret elven hunter who wants to find a case called Sirenrod. I don't even know how you say that. Treachery. So it's going to be a fetch quest, obviously. But you jot all this down, and then you have the journey. And you would do the same thing. You would roll these dice again, and you would get what their journey is going to be. And it goes from D4 to D20. The journey is, and then various things, and it ends, various things. There is a/and, and then it has a. So let's just roll it again and see what that comes up with. So we roll again. We got a 3 on the D3. 4 on the D6, 3 on the D8, 7 on the D10, 10 on the D12, and 11 on the 20. So that would be, the journey is arduous and unpredictable weather and inaccessible roads. So that's not going to be fun. And it ends with, number 4, at a black lake. And then number 8, there is I got a 3. There's a forgotten. D10 is a 7. There's a forgotten farm. So the journey is arduous and unpredictable weather and inaccessible roads, and ends at a black lake. There is a forgotten farm. Surrounded by, this is our D12, come down to, I rolled a 10, surrounded by strange symbols. This place is called, I come down to number 11, Keetal Shore. So now I have information on the journey there, and you can just jot that down, or you can play through the travel time. And then we would do the same thing for the adventure site. This is kind of where the big culmination of the adventure happens. And it works that way for each chart. If you get to playing solo, or you get to in the situation where you want to just, make stuff up on the fly, basically, these charts are fantastic for throwing an adventure together last minute. I'm not going to go through doing the adventure site. You get the idea for how it works. And now I'll show you how I put it into play in my game that I was running. And I haven't finished it. So this is just video 1, basically. So what we have is Dragonbane solo campaign. I listed my characters. I started with Traut Nightstabber and Verilyn Grimjaw. That's my Dwarf Thief and Human Fighter, respectively. And I just wrote in a couple of would-be adventurers that are down on their luck. They have made their way to the Misty Vale and the town of Outskirt. Now, dead broke, they are hungry for a job that will bring them some coin. So then I went through and did all of my roles for the quest and the journey. So now I've listed it as Adventure 1, and I'm going to show you how I rolled down the charts and then what I pieced together just from what I thought sounded cool and how I played this out. So I needed to know what the adventure was. So this is what I rolled. One day, around the warmth of the campfire, a messenger comes up to them, sent by Smola, a sad halfling bard. She wants to protect a helmet. It is called the Deceiver. Okay, so that's my quest. They are being contacted by this halfling bard who wants this helmet called the Deceiver. I thought about it for a little bit, and I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? So the helmet has magical powers that would enhance all of her performance and help make her a lot of money. So, and I figured, the Deceiver is probably helping her pretend to be other people. And she's a bard, so that could come in very useful. She has come upon a rumor of where the helmet is and is willing to pay you 100 gold to retrieve it for her. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot from D&D terms, but in Dragonbane, 100 gold is pretty good. So then I rolled to find out what my journey was going to be like. The journey is hard and miserable, and it ends at a black lake. There is a hidden tomb surrounded by standing stones. This place is called Ferris's Demise. I said, okay, so just randomly determined with a D4 that it was it's going to be a 4-day journey to the Black Lake, but because it said it is hard and miserable, I'm figuring there's no good roads, good trails. They're going to be trekking through the wilderness a lot, so I'm doubling the time. Now, this is a point in solo play where you can just describe this is what the journey is like and then skip to finding the adventure site. Or you can play it out with the journey section in the chapter before this, where it gives you how to break each day down into 4 6-hour shifts and the actions you can take during those shifts, and you can only travel for up to 2 shifts per day. So if I needed to travel a total of 4 shifts, that increased it because it's hard and miserable. I said, well, that's going to double it. So I'm going to need 8 shifts of travel through this terrain to make it to the Black Lake. Now, this is where Lurig comes in, because Traut and Verilyn decide to enlist the help of their friend, a goblin hunter, Lurig, because he knows his way around. And they've met him drinking at one of the fine drinking establishments or eating establishments, either one, in Outskirt. And they've befriended this goblin hunter. So now the 3 of them are going to go out together on this quest. And I made some boxes here at the bottom, and each time I completed a shift of travel, I would mark off one of the boxes until I got all 8 marked. So you don't have to play this out. Like I said, you can skip through the adventure and just kind of describe it if you're journaling. But for this part, I wanted to see how it worked to physically use all of this. So at least for this first episode of this, I decided to go through it day by day and actually get all of the shifts that I needed for making this trek. So one of the things that I did is I changed, remember I told you I changed the random encounters. So I devised my own chart system here for random encounters. And how it works is at the start of each new day, I roll a d4 to determine what shift on that day an encounter is possible. So I roll a d4, and if you have 4 shifts in the day, you have morning, day, evening, and night. So I roll a d4, and that's going to tell me which shift it's possible to have an encounter. Then during that shift, I'm going to roll yes, no on the fortune chart to see if there is an encounter. If there is an encounter, then I roll a d20 on the following chart, and that would be 1 to 6, it's orcs, 7 is a manticore, 8 is a ghost, 9 is a giant spider, 10 is goblins, 11 is wolves, 12 is skeletons, 13 is a troll, 14 is vampire bats, and then 15 to 20, it just depends on the situation. Could be cultists, could be thieves, could be hunters. I'll determine that as it becomes appropriate. So all the encounters are considered hostile except 15 to 20. The cultists, thieves, and hunters, you might be able to negotiate with them. If a 15 to 20 is rolled, you roll on I would roll on the reaction chart on the reaction on the fortune chart to find out whether they're friendly, hostile, or whatever. So the way I did this was I started with day 1, and then I'm putting each of my shifts in and what happens during the shift. So day 1, chance for random encounter is during shift 2, which is daytime. And then I'll roll yes, no on the fortune chart. So I start on day 1 in the morning shift. Now, there's no Bane on the Pathfinder roll because Lurig is familiar with where the Black Lake location is. If he wasn't and they didn't have a map, then there would be a Bane on the roll. So the first shift is all travel. He makes a Pathfinder roll to make sure there's no mishaps. He gets a 6. That's a success. They have no mishaps. So I've got 1 shift of travel under my belt. Then we get into day. This is shift 2. The group continues to try to travel. The Pathfinder roll is an 8. It's a success, so there's no mishap. So I have 2 shifts of travel now out of the 8 that I need. But remember, during the day is when I have a chance for a random encounter on day 1. So shift 2 day, I roll for an encounter on the fortune chart. I get a 5, so yes, there is an encounter. So I roll a 17, and it is cultist. So then I was like, okay, well, how many of these cultists? I'm not sure how many they're running into. So I rolled on the fortune chart for size, and I got 1 or none. And since I already know there's at least 1 because they're running into them, I said, okay, well, they've got a lone cultist. I rolled on the inspiration table. I did 3 rolls to get some inspiration about this cultist for control, thing, and attribute. Action, thing, and attribute. And action was control, thing was knowledge, and attribute was mighty. So this is one of those points where I was talking about you have to kind of sit and think about what you want to do. How do you want to piece these puzzle pieces together for them to make sense? So I thought about it for a little while, and then I said, okay, so the cultist has found a stone with engravings of a mighty spell. So that's the mighty and the knowledge part. And he seeks to control it and take it back to his cult. So that's the control part. So we have a cultist who's found this cool stone that has the spell engraved on it, and he's trying to get it back to his cult. Then I did a reaction roll because it was 15 to 20 to find out what his reaction to the party, the PCs, is like. And I got a 3. So he's wary of them. He's nervous when he sees them approaching. he will try, and I asked the fortune chart, I said, well, is he going to try to hide or slip past the heroes? Likely. The fortune chart roll was a 3 and a 1, so no. So he's not going to hide. He's not going to try to slip past them. He's just going to try to walk right past them. Now, since he's not going to hide or sneak past the heroes, he will just march right past them, not speaking, but keeping his nervous eyes on them. Now, you have to remember, too, when you're playing this game, you're going to have knowledge your characters don't. I know that this is a cultist and he's a bad guy, but my heroes don't know that. So since the cultist is just going to try to walk past them, I see no reason for them to engage with him. They don't know he's a cultist. He could just be some traveler. And I could have pushed that further and had them engage with him, but I kind of felt like that was metagaming at that point, and I'm like, I'm not really going to do that because it just doesn't make sense. He's just some guy walking through the wilderness, and he just kind of keeps an eye on them until he passes by. So nothing else really happens with that. It just adds to the story a little bit. And who knows? That might be something that I come back to, like, what was that cultist doing? Is he going to be part of the story later on? Who knows? I now have it in my notes so that I can use it later. So that brings us to shift 3, the evening shift. Lurig will make camp. He makes a bushcraft roll. He gets a 6. It's a success. And each character will consume a ration for the day. I allow PCs that are just sitting on watch to gain the benefit of a rest. So they take turns resting and sleeping and taking watches during shift 4. And that would be nighttime. The party rests and sleeps. There's no encounter. And we move on to day 2. Now, morning of day 2, shift 1, I roll. Well, before I even start the shift. And shift 3 is the possible encounter. So that's during the evening on day 2. So we start with shift 1, which is the morning. I spend the first shift traveling through the wilderness again, and a bushcraft roll of 14, and that's a fail. So that means we have a mishap. So I have to roll on the mishap table for traveling, and I get an 11, a savage animal. And I rolled between a wild boar, a wolf, and a bear, and I got a bear. And this is funny because it never really would have occurred to me to use a bear. When I think animals attacking my party out in the woods or the wilderness, I usually gravitate towards my favorite, which is wolves. But I said, okay, let's go with the bear and see, how it is. It felt threatened and it attacks. So its first attack it goes first and it attacks Velarum. The bear bite and rolls a dragon, so it gets double damage. Yikes. Rolled a 5 for 10 points. Velarum is hurting. He gets viciously attacked by this bear, and he is badly injured. He swings back with his two-handed axe at the bear, and he gets a 4, which is a success, and does 10 points of damage. Then Trot, our dwarf, runs up to help his friend and attacks the bear. He had to push, so he failed the first time, but he did get a 4, which is a success. And now he has picked up the condition of angry because he had to push. And then Lurig goes last, and he fires his bow at the bear. Roll is 4, success. He does 5 damage, which is all they needed to drop the bear. And then I said, okay, they dropped a bear. They can now gain bear meat to eat as if they had been hunting. And there wasn't anything on the hunting chart for how many rations you could get off a bear. So I just used the stats for the deer on page 103 and then rolled to determine, and they gained 11 extra rations of bear meat. I've never eaten bear meat, so I don't know if it's any good or not, but it's meat, so, whatever. We're talking about a world with goblins and dwarves. So we go into shift 2. This is during the day. Now, instead of traveling, which is what they'd like to do, they have to rest for the whole shift, the whole 6 hours, to heal and to spend some time with Lurig cutting up the bear for meat. Velarum and Trot rested back to full, but they gained no distance traveling during shift 1. Remember, they needed to travel for 4 days, so that's 2 shifts traveling per day. That's a total of 8 shifts, and they've only accomplished 2 so far. All right, now we're in the evening, which is shift 3. This is where the possible encounter is. I rolled, got a 1, so there's no encounter. Lurig uses a willpower point to make camp, so he doesn't have to roll, and everyone eats and talks sitting around the campfire, preparing to go to bed and get up the next day and keep traveling. Shift 4, night. Trot and Velarum split the watch while Lurig sleeps. All right, we go into day 3, and I roll, and the possible encounter is at night on this one. So we start out shift 1, which is the morning. They travel. Bushcraft roll is a 5. That's a success. So now I'm up to 3 successful shifts traveling. Go into daytime, which is shift 2. They're traveling. Bushcraft roll is a 6. Another success. So now I'm up to 4 successful traveling shifts. And then evening, which is shift 3, Lurig spends a willpower to make camp again, and they all eat and rest. All right, so then we go into, let me just do it like this. Then we go into night, which is shift 4. I roll for the encounter. There's no encounter that night. I get a 1. Everyone gets full rest. So then we go into day 4. I roll, and possible encounter is 4, so it's nighttime again. Morning, shift 1, they travel again. Bushcraft is a success, so I think they're up to 5 now. They travel again during shift 2, and he rolls a 20, which is a fail. That is a critical fail. So I roll on the mishap, and it's really not that bad. The mishap was a 3. It's torn clothes. Lurig chooses a bad path and leads them through a thorny thicket. Velarum's clothes are torn and badly and now count as rags. Good thing he still has armor. There is no travel distance gained during this shift because, he critically failed it. So evening of shift 3, Lurig spends 1 willpower to make camp. They eat and rest. Nighttime possible encounter. Again, I rolled a 1, so no encounter that night. Then we go into day 5. I roll, and possible encounter is 3 during the evening. So the morning shift starts on day 5. They travel. I roll a 8 for bushcraft. That's a success. And then again during shift 2, roll a 3 for bushcraft, so another success. So I think I'm up to like 7. I'm on successes now, because I was marking them off on the little thing as I went. Evening, shift 3, possible encounter. I roll a 4. Yes. I roll for the encounter. It is orcs. I roll on the fortune chart. I get for the number, and I get a 3, so it's 1d6. So I roll a d6, and of course, I get 6 orcs. So 6 orcs attack the party that evening. Orc warriors come across the heroes as they are setting up camp. Roll for reaction. It was hostile, which I shouldn't have rolled for reaction. They're just automatically hostile. I wrote down the basic skills for my orcs here. The scimitar, skill level 12, damage is 2d6, d4. Bonus damage, they had studded leather armor. And then I had their hit points. And it was a pretty intense, bloody battle. And my heroes barely survived it. All 3 heroes were down at one point or the other during the fight and had to rally to keep fighting at 0 hit points. I did, however, give them a pull for each orc from the treasure deck, 1 for each enemy. So I ended up pulling the healing potion, which we talked about earlier, the rope, ring of keys, a lute, which I think they left behind, jeweled necklace, and assorted maps. And then I gave them noted the worth of it over here, so when they get back to town, if they want to sell it, how much they can get. Lurig spends a willpower point to make camp. Everyone eats, and they drag the orc bodies into the woods away from the camp. Shift 4, which is night. Everyone rests and sleeps and heals. And then we get to day 6. Possible encounter is 3, the evening. And then I have morning shift, travel, bushcraft, 4. That's a success. That's the last success they needed. This brings the first leg of the adventure to an end. They have arrived at the Black Lake. So at this point, I did experience rolls to do any leveling up that I would get. And then we'll spend the next part of the adventure exploring around the lake. Now, going back to this, remember now they're at the lake, right? And while they're at the lake, they're at the Black Lake, they have to find a hidden tomb that is surrounded by standing stones. And this place is called Ferris's Demise. So, what I will do now is I will kind of shift out of the going shift by shift, day by day thing into making rolls for them to try to find, is this tomb somewhere around the lake, on the outside of the lake, like on the, in the woods, or is it on an island in the lake and they're going to have to boat out to it? I don't know yet. We're going to roll that on the next section, the next game session I do for this. Now, keep in mind, that was the whole going day by day, shift by shift. That was a lot of record keeping, but I wanted to see how it worked for myself to play through it, because if it comes up in gameplay and my players want to, because I have players that really enjoy that crunchy note taking, play by play, what happens during each part of the day. They enjoy that. Some of them do. So I probably won't do it all the time, but I'll probably do it sometimes during journeys to let them get that in. These are also the same players who like to inventory everything. They like to micromanage their character sheets, and that's fine. Some people love that. I found this fun to play through. Reading back through it, it's like, I don't know, it doesn't seem as exciting reading back through the journal about each shift, but I have all that stuff in my notes now, and it's now stuff I can use. I can go back to if I need to pull elements for a future adventure. Just like the cultist they ran into that they don't know was a cultist. That dude had dudette had his or her own plans, and they're doing something with that stone. They're trying to, and it might never come back up. But if I see an opportunity to bring that story element back into it, I now have notes on that I can pull from. Same thing here. We also know that bears are dangerous. One bear was about as dangerous as fighting orcs. Like, it was pretty nasty. If he had gotten a couple of more hits off, I'd have probably had some dead characters. I just got lucky with my rolls, but it prompted me to go ahead and print some bear miniatures to throw at my players. I'm just gonna do it. Like, wolves just ain't getting it done like bears do. Like, that was nasty. But you also don't have to play through that part. Like I said, you could get your setup for the adventure, and then you could be like, oh, it was a hard, dangerous adventure that ended here by rolling on the charts in the book, and just journal that and just leave it at that. You could say, it took 4 days, so I'm going to take 4 rations off of everybody, and then not worry about it from that point on. You can do it either way. It's whatever's fun for you. Remember, this is your game, and you're playing solo. So the only person you're really having to entertain is you. If you find that part of it too tedious and not something you want to do, throw it out. You don't need it. You don't have to have it. If you like that tedious note keeping, then do it. You can do it with a group. You can do it by yourself. However you want to do it. That's what these rules are there for. These rules are very plug and play. You can use what you want to, discard the rest. So, that being said, I don't know that I'll use it every time I travel in this solo game, but my heroes know that they're after this helmet. They know that they think that it's somewhere in this tomb at the Black Lake, and they've been through a small adventure and some encounters to get to the Black Lake, and now in the next episode, we're going to deal with them searching the Black Lake, trying to find the tomb, and how to possibly get into it. And then from there, we will go to the final part, the big adventure part, where they have to fight the big bad and deal with the tomb itself to get whatever they're going to get out of there. And from there, we'll see where it goes. They may go back to town. They may go off on some other adventure. Who knows? It's just whatever the dice decide and whatever I think sounds cool as we're playing, that's what we're going to do. So anyway, it's great to be back playing some solo Dragonbane. I love Dragonbane. It's a fantastic game. It's just so fun. It's so easy to hack. And I hear people talk about how simple it is, and it is simple compared to some games that are out there. But it has a lot of those plug-and-play functions that you can add crunch to the game. For instance, charting what happens during every 6-hour stint of a day. That can get tedious, and it can add a lot of crunch to that with random encounters and weather and all kind of stuff. But again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is your game. Take it and have fun with it. That's what I'm doing. I've used this solo system for multiple games now, and probably use it from some. I don't think I'm going to use it when I do my Warhammer. Warhammer, I think I'm going to use one-page Mythic. But anyway, we're getting there on that one. This video obviously is going to be for members first. I will probably put it, I don't know if I'm going to put it live or if I'm just going to put it in the playlist where it's going to eventually become members only, because I posted about that on YouTube that I'm doing some members only stuff, and this may be one of those that gets that. So that's all I have for right now. I hope you enjoyed the video. I will be back and we will explore the Black Lake and see if we can find Ferris's demise, that tomb that they're looking for. And until next time, my friends, good gaming and good luck.